But you are now discharged. That's your tea. To allow the HR issues to be managed in a transition over a 3-year period. Because we have to talk to each and every staff for them to understand the implications. But we believe that if they get the right information, it's beneficial for them to move with the same terms and conditions. Then the shareholders agreement, we need to sign off on it, have a first board meeting of the project company, because we are board members of that company before the company can kickstart operation. So the land issue, we will apply for a waiver. Then the leasing of the area in port, that also has to be prepared by way of a sublease in terms of getting the investor to commit to them. So by and large, these are basically the issues that are remaining. But we believe strongly as a government that it's our position to have them commit to these clauses before we go into effectiveness. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for our monitoring. So this is where we are in terms of the postponement. But those were the main items that were remaining. But thankfully, the two of the critical ones have been resolved, and now it is remaining the financial model. But then the financial model also, the way we are going, is a major risk for us. So we need to conclude on that matter before we go into effectiveness, because it has all the revenue sharing and particularly the amount of the net revenue that they need to put in this escrow account. That is very important for us, because from those funds we will now use to do all the preparatory works in Sanyang and also the investment. The land in Sanyang, why also we ask for a waiver, because it has to be an engagement process, because lately we have had some concerns expressed by the VDC in terms of the engagement. What brought about the problem was there was breakdown in communication from our side when the consultant that we hired to go on the ground to do the mapping exercise, was visiting households and properties that were affected within the layout that is identified, and it brought some kind of worry. So we engaged at the level of our minister, and we have now agreed to co-opt the VDC members that they have identified into the steering committee, which is the second layer that is chaired by the permanent secretary, the Minister of Transport. So for every activity that we are doing now, they will participate and their views will be taken on board at that level. But for this purpose of this mapping exercise, we have asked the consultant to withdraw, to fall back. And now what we've been doing is to engage the community, to sensitize them on what we have now done to be a pre-assessment meeting. That before we go on to the assessment, we engage them with the consultant and our team to explain to them the purpose of the exercise. Then we come back now, take their concerns. And then before the consultant goes back in, we have a pre-entry meeting. So these are things that are on course. But we expect that with the right waiver, within the next 6 months, we'll be able to go over this. Another issue also remained from government not being able to deliver was also the site that we identified in Kawur and Basse for the dry port. The site we identified in Basse is belonging to JGC. It's the most project-ready site on the North Bank. In Kawur also the jetty belongs to GPA, but the warehouses and the area we identified belongs to GGC. So now to get GGC to seed the land with their value into the project, they had a different proposition. They wanted to hold equity in the business. So, but thankfully in the concession agreement we had envisaged to do the inland logistics ports, we call them, as a separate JV. So there's a possibility to get a third-party investor involved in that component. So for that also we will ask for a waiver, because it will take maybe about 6 months to conclude with GGC and do all the bankability assessment, so to analyze and determine how the value that GGC has come up with, we agree on it first, and then how to transpose that into equity in the business that is going to be established. But by and large, that's where we are, honorable members. Maybe if there's any details that I may have missed out, my colleagues are here and they are also engaged in the activity. They will be at liberty to give further clarity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, what he's telling me is if the same thing was occurring in my mind, if your team can do their presentation in Ghana so that, if they have any presentation or they want to wait for questions.
Apart from
you,
then if not, they wait for questions.
No, not particularly. I think MD has elaborated on most part of the transaction that is currently happening. And I think at this point, if you need some clarity on certain issues, which are specific to, maybe our rules, we can clear that.
That's okay. And thank you very much. MD, thank you, the in-house council and honorable members. We all heard from the MD. For me, my only concern, MD, is like we are not approaching this concession agreement with a very strong contract. And I have my reasons to say this. Because in your own submission, you said the scope keep changing. You said by yourself, the scope keep changing. So that brings doubt into my mind, whether we are in fact approaching this crucial national investment with a strong contract that we can be secured. Because for me, it's like the addendum might even be more than the contract itself now. Because if, like for instance, we already signed something with this particular investor, but in your own submission, you say the scope of that agreement keep changing. And all those changes must be captured for us to have a strong contract. And those changes will now come as addendum. So my fear is, are we approaching this contract with a very strong contract? That's number one. Number two, I think the committee, what we could have done is to request some of these documents before meeting them. Because what all of you have said was based on documents. Like for instance, where you said assessment. We need to have that assessment result. And Honorable Vice Chair and the committee members, I think we need to request for that assessment report done by the consultant of the concessionaire and the Gambia Ports yourself, because you said they didn't match. We need to know the figure variance of what out of that assessment, what was the figure raised by the post, and what was the figure raised by the individual consultant hired by the consultant. We need to know all of that. But if we have those reports before us now, I think that's the time we are going to have, we are going to ask more, pertinent questions. And I'm requesting that on behalf of the committee, we need to have that assessment report. The assessment report with regards to all your movable assets and those stock items, we need to get the report of that. Your own report and the report generated by the concessionaire, so that before this committee session, and we can invite you people here again. My last intervention area is going to be where you mentioned where. Okay, we also want to get the all these conditions by the government and by the consensus that we are not met until we are not able to get into effectiveness of the contract. Can we get the list? Because you have, even though you have tried your best to give them but we don't have them in record. If you can also request those condition precedents that we are not met by the concessionaire and the Gambia government itself, so that we can arrange for another committee session with you people. Vice Chair.
Thank you. Yeah.
Get those things for me, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you very much, MD. For me, maybe I have a few points to add on, and also, if possible, with some questions. First of all, as you have rightly mentioned with regards to, let's start with the agreement between the ports and then the Turkish company. The number of 6 years for Banjul and 30 years for Sanyang. And then, if you look at the way things are going, it's like it's from Banjul that you are collecting to develop Sanyang, or it's from Banjul that you are collecting to start Sanyang. So if Banjul is for 6 years, the other 25 years is going to be from where? The other 24 years is going to be from where? Because after 6 years, they are handing over Banjul to you to say this is your own project. Take care of Banjul. From the 24 years, where is the money coming from? What is the agreement on that? The other thing also that I need to know also when it comes to your movable assets. If we are purchased by you, and this were investment by you, and then you are not entirely giving out the whole port. After the 6 years, it's coming back to you. If you give out the movable assets now, and because you are requesting for payments, the money that you're going to generate will be able to get you back those equipments. The money that will be generated will be able to get you back those equipments that you are already giving out. Because after the project, are you going to maintain those equipment, or they are going out with those equipment? That's number two. The other thing also with regards to your staffs, you made mention about staff transfer. that you want to transfer your staff, and it's now on the staff to decide, to choose to say whether I want to go with the new company or I want to stay with ports. Those staff that would feel like to stay with you, how are you going to pay them? Because if all they are taking care of everything, how are you going to pay those staffs? That's we need to be very clear. And then MD, that's we want clarity from this new company that's coming here in the government to at least work with you. According to the information that we got, they were in Guinea-Conakry, and the lesson learned from there was negative. Was there any proper study? Or was there any proper study to go and investigate and sit with the Guinean to ask them what went wrong, so that we can also learn from them? I think I will stop here for the meantime, and then later on we see what is possible.
Yeah, before another person come in, Honorable Vice Chair raised a very important issue here, which for me I'm a little bit confused. Is the port, after 6 years, is the concession completely abandoned the Banjul ports and moved to Sanyang, or is still part of it?
Okay, if the Honorable Committee can allow me to.
Yes.
Okay, that point confused me. Yeah.
Thank God. Okay, first on the first question by the Honorable Chair about the scope that keeps changing. The agreement we have with the investor is very specific. They stay in Banjul, do minimal investment to turn around the business whilst we develop the scope and invest in Sanyang. So what that means, about 20 million euros was envisaged in the proposal to invest basically in doing the new container terminal. That's the half-die properties we acquired. Investing in equipment and doing the digitalization project. So those were costed at 23 million. Now, before the effective date, they came on the ground and saw there is still congestion. And from their own analysis, they believe that we need to still extend the jetty by another 200 meters so that we can take 3 big ships at a time. From their point of view, it's better to catch the business now before they relocate, because that's their own explanation, that if the ships that are waiting relocate to another port, even if you do the new port in Sanyang, to get them back would be difficult. So it was their own proposal that, look, we need to extend the jetty and then reclaim some part of the sea in Banjul to do a new container terminal. So that's why their investment value went to 33 million euro. But we came back to say, no, we don't need that investment, additional investment in Banjul. Just stick to the original 20, because you are staying here for 6 years. Then we move to Sanyang. So that's what I meant by the models keep changing, because that was their own proposal. But our position is, let's maintain it to the barest minimum that was already, and that's why we ended up. So if they have any additional proposal, that is a separate consideration altogether. So that's what I meant by the scope keep changing. Okay. The other one, the assessment of assets, we will provide the report, as you rightly said. But you know, in valuation, there are different methods. Some will look at the replacement cost, some will use at the economic life that is remaining, and you know, they are not bound to accept any equipment, because they are the investors. They can decide to say all the equipment we found here are not usable, they are scrap. So it remains property of GPA, then we sell them by scrap and they invest in new equipment. But it has happened that when they came, they realized that some of the equipment, typically you'll have a new container handler, we call it rich stacker. It costs about 490,000 euro. But maybe there's a defective part. If it is lying more than 1 year not repaired, for them the value would drop. So those are the things that they use in the assessment. But the variance was not too much between the two valuations. And the variance was mostly to do with stock items. That some of us were using these high-star spares that were in our stores for more than 20 years. So the book value that we give them is not what they come now to determine. So that was where there was a huge variance. But on the craft, some of the marine craft that they valued, we agree on those ones. So, but we will provide the report like.
Yeah, we inform ourselves
yes.
By way of the report, yeah.
And on the conditions precedent that were not met, you know, we hired the services of Maritime Transport Business Solution, MTBS. So they are our transaction advisor, and they're handling that process. They have been presenting weekly very elaborate reports on all the CP items and the level of achievement on both parties, and they produce a weighting and scoring. That also we will make available. So the tracking of the compliance rate for the conditions precedent, all They are all captured by this independent consultant that we hired. So what, as you rightly said, we will make the copy of this report available, the ones we use to base our judgment that we need the extension.
And okay, yeah, you want
the 6-year collection in Banjul, and then who is going to invest? The concession contract is modeled such that the investor, Albayrak, bears all the financing risk. Government is not putting any financial contribution. Why we say put some of the net profit in a separate account is we don't want the investor, like what is normal is if there is any profit, the shareholders will distribute it as dividend. But we say no, let's forgo the dividend on both sides and put that extra cash in a separate account after you deduct all the operating expenses. That this money is only used for Sanyang, is to commit them to invest in Sanyang. Otherwise, what would have been normal is any profits that is generated in Banjul within the 6 years, the shareholders, they would just distribute it as dividend. But it was our own decision that no, let's forward the dividend on both parts and put it in an escrow account that can be used to invest in Sanyang. So we are not spending any money on the project. And the financing of the Sanyang is entirely borne by the investor. Government is not contributing any investment. So when they purchase the assets now belong to this new company because we are paid already. So the company owns the assets. When they move to Sanyang, if some of them are usable, they will still use them. If they need to replace them, they will replace them. But it becomes their asset. It is carried on their balance sheet.
About
the new company.
About you?
No, we are not involved in the operation.
No, after they go?
After they go, you know what we envisage to do in Banjul, the fixed assets of the port, they are not part of the transaction process. They still remain our property. So they are not taken as collateral to raise any debt financing.
Your movable assets, is what I'm saying.
No, it's only the movable, the machines.
Yeah, the machines. You know, if they go now to Sanyang, to operate in Sanyang, will you stop operating in Banjul?
No, we are not involved in operations. It's now the company that owns
after the 6 years.
After the 6 years, what we plan to do in Banjul is to maintain only about 25% of the 23 hectares, is the whole land area. We maintain for river transport. Then 75% of the area, we are going to go into real estate and property development, to develop a cruise and marina, and also do residential. For maybe people who may have lost their property in Banjul can have the opportunity to come back and live in Havda again, because we will not need all that space. So that's our plan.
My concern here is, 6 and 24, there's a big gap.
Yes.
And then what you're going to generate here, within these 6 years, will you be able to complete Sanyang?
No.
To make Sanyang operational?
No.
Because after the 6 years, we must continue bringing containers. We must continue operating.
Yes.
So within this period, how will you be operating?
No, whilst they're operating in Banjul, Sanyang is also being developed.
Yes.
That's the timing. If they start from year 1, year 2, they're operating in Banjul. Within that same year 1, year 2, all the preparatory activities, the detailed engineering design is being done for the port infrastructure to be constructed in Sanyang. If those are approved, those designs, then the following 2 years will be the construction phase. So according to our timeline, within 6 years, the first phase in Sanyang would be ready. So the activity will now move to Sanyang. And then the property in Banjul will revert back to government. That's the arrangement.
So there's come to your staff now?
Yes, on the staff transfer, maybe the lawyer will elaborate more, but what I can give as a scenario is, in the agreement we said all operating staff should be transferred under the company, under the same terms and conditions. You see, working on a GPA, you are a public servant under the pensions scheme, for example. But if you move into a private company, you go under the Provident Fund.
Yes.
And for the staff, it will not be beneficial because you get pension on your taxable income. Whereas if you go to the private, it is a Provident Fund and you get tax on your gross. And I'm sure if the staff understand that, they will know that it is beneficial to go into this company with your pension. Your service will be guaranteed. Your same terms and conditions of employment, all the facilities like loans and training will still be available to you. And those that do not wish to stay, the example we can give is, we just try to think at the top of our heads that we have a staff that maybe up to about 50% of the staff that will be affected within an earning category of basic salary of maybe 18,000 per month. So according to the law, if you go for termination, you will get 2 months of your basic salary for every year of service. Now, 18,000 by 2 is 36,000. That is on your today's salary. And if you go back, the basic salary maybe 10 years earlier would have been lower. But just to give the benefit of the doubt, for want of explanation, 36,000 by 10 years, for example, fetches $360,000, plus maybe any notice that can be agreed or ex gratia payment. Compare that against a liability. Maybe somebody has a building loan only of $400,000. So the net effect will be you will get terminated and still owe the company. You know, so if staff understand that, they will know that, well, it will be beneficial to move into this new arrangement because you are going with your same terms and conditions. And what we've negotiated with the company also is that we have consulted with Social Security and we've been advised that we can invoke that option. Even where this is now a private company, staff can move there and still be under the pension scheme. So that is something that we have also negotiated with the company. But by and large, we believe staff moving will be more beneficial to them.
Yeah, before you go there, how, I think he asked something that is very important. Is it true that Albrecht similar intervention in other countries is not a good news?
Yes, I was coming to that. That was his last.
Before you come there, still on the staffs, you know there are liabilities. I think you know where I'm talking from because you are always at PEG. Those liabilities will be taken care of by the new company because this staff that you are referring to, if they choose to move to Albrecht to work with them, how about your liability with those staffs?
No, they continue with those liabilities to the company. No. And once they are deducted, they get reimbursed to GPA. That's why we are signing off on a staff transition program because there's a lot of issues that need to be resolved in that arrangement. Exactly. What we intend to agree with the company is, look, because you are paying them from the revenue that you generate in the business, and you are the liabilities are deducted from source. So you are the one paying their salary. It should not be difficult to deduct the amount that they are owing and reimburse GPA.
GPA.
Yes. That's what we are going to do in the arrangement, in a separate agreement.
So if staff choose to stay with you?
Well, we have identified the staff that are going and that are staying. We have a staff center of about 1,250. But those involved in operations, like the security, the harbors, the traffic, health and safety, I can't remember all the departments at the top of my head, but there are everybody that's involved in operation, even the people in the stores that deal with mechanical stores, health and safety, they are all involved in operations. There was a contention even from the investor that the number is too like, but we managed to tell them that look, these are staff that are involved. Somebody in the stores, you cannot classify that to be non-operative because the stock items that they are handling are for the machines. So it's operative staff. So we qualify them to be operative. Now 932 or 31 of them are involved. The ones that are remaining with GPA, those are non-operative staff, and those are our support staff, people like in the admin department, finance, audit. Those remain with GPA. But if you are part of the 931 and you choose not to go to this new company, you have the option of coming for severance. And like I told you, the example I gave, just a typical scenario. I'm sure if the individual staff understand the implication, they will know that they will be better off going to the new company with their same terms and conditions.
On the same staff here, because yes, we do have reports. The staff security, they are security with the new company, because we all know people when they come in. When they come in newly, they tend to be very good. But when they have what they want, they care about our own people, and this is our concern.
Okay.
They are security.
What we have done there is
trying to protect them.
What we have done there is under this same concession agreement. Staff planning is not something that we can impose on the new company, because they have to determine, for example, training. But all the statutory earnings and benefits will be guaranteed. Training is the only area that will be subject to the company's own rules and regulations, because the company may have to train based on their own needs assessment. I don't envisage a situation where we try to prevail on the company to do training as per the way we perceive, because it's based on their own assessment. Another matter which we are also in line to agree with the company is to put it on the reserve matters. That is to do with retrenchment. Anytime they want to retrench anybody, it has to have our express consent. So these are the guarantees that we try to give to the staff, that they are not coming to put anybody out of their jobs. But again, some of the also positive sides are that there will be more accountability, there will be more productivity, because a private setup, the kind of inducement they may give, and what we have learned from private sector experiences, they train based on the needs, because they are also in business. They would want also people to be more productive. And generally, we are not very much worried about our staff, because from even their engagement, they have realized that our staff are up to the task, because we have staff that are competent and from their own analysis. The typical example I can give is in doing the asset purchase, they were reluctant to pay for like the software systems that we used to develop in-house. All our delivery processes and tallying are now digitalized. They said no, they have their own software. So when they came to do the presentation, you can tell from the get-go that our systems are more advanced than theirs. So they now consented to use our own system at a fee. Even some of our staff that are non-operative, that are running the system, they want to take them into the new company. I was just having a discussion with council, but he said, because they are non-operative staff, let's not bring them into that arrangement. If this company wants those people that are not part of the group that are going, let them have a separate arrangement with them, so that if they are happy to go on their new terms, they sever relationship with GPA and join the company on their own volition. But by and large, what we've seen is staff, we expect improved terms and conditions. And if the project gets implemented the way it is, we expect even for them to create more jobs. But one thing we cannot also impose on the company is how to plan on their HR. From 2025, because the fund was already committed in a budget, all our long-term training, all our staff motivation, they will accept it the way it is presented, what we present to them. So they will respect that. And then we want to commit them on a 3-year plan, not to touch anybody for the next 3 years until they come up with a proper HR audit. And then after 3 years, if they come up with a HR audit that says maybe they are in excess of their needs in certain department, it will be still for the individuals to choose to stay or go on a package that will be mutually agreed.
That's right.
So we are hopeful that with this, clauses in place, the staff will be secure.
Okay, now news about their performance in other...
Well, their performance in Conakry, from our due diligence, we know they are running a bulk facility. And the productivity has increased in that facility based on the figures that we have been availed. And what we know also is that they are constructing a new jetty to handle dry bulk. I think it's to do with ore or mineral ore that they are exporting and not in. They are investing to construct this new jetty. That we have seen with our eyes. And what we have received also from reports is they came and initially there was resistance from the people because of maybe fear of the unknown. But now from the records that we are receiving from independent sources is that they have even managed to create more jobs and earnings have increased for people that are working under their facility. But they are not running the whole port in Conakry, because Conakry, their concession part is by Bolore, the other part, dealing mostly with bulk cargo, is what Al Bayrak is running as a company.
Okay, honorable members, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, MD and your team. Basically, I have 2 questions, but MD addressed my first question, that is about the transfer of staffs. The second question that I have is the issue of land at Sanyang. When do you think is going to be resolved?
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chise, for that question. We are about to close up before we go into effective date, because it's one of the obligations of government that we cannot fulfill. So we want to apply to the investor to grant us a waiver of rights for not being able to deliver that aspect, because the Sanyang one is becoming more and more sensitive as we engage with the community. But what has happened is the area that we identified for the port infrastructure alone and the special economic zone and the free zone is not to what many people expect. Maybe at times, like council is telling me, whenever you are on the radio, you cause sleepless nights in the village. No, maybe it's, the statements are misconstrued. What we say is there is the area that is identified for the port infrastructure. But then beyond the perimeter of the port, up to the highway, government earmarks it for future development. And the process is going to be compensation and acquisition. It has to follow due process. So now what we have done is, we've done the mapping exercise. And the land area targeted for the port is not quite as extensive as even people envisage in the first place. We will submit all these documents in the master plan so you can have an appreciation of what we are referring to now. The mapping has been done. I think from the top of my head, the figure I remember is about 461 properties and settlements have been identified to be within the port area. Now the next step is to do the evaluation. This is where we had some miscommunication with the VDC and the consultant had to withdraw. So now with our engagement with them, we've done the pre-assessment meeting. Next we will do the pre-entry meeting for the consultant to go back now. He doesn't even need to go there physically because they've combed the area and done what they needed to do. But now is to do the evaluation. And after the evaluation, we will now engage the community. But between 6 months, we think we should be able to achieve progress in the land, particularly where the port infrastructure, because now they are reclaiming the sea and building the port infrastructure on water. So there's less need for land for the immediate port infrastructure. It's only the special economic zone and the free zone, which are out of the concession scope, because we want to maintain that as a government for local content and also open up other business. Because our strategy was not to put every activity in one basket and give it to the investor. There are some that will remain under government. So they will just concentrate on the port infrastructure immediately. And for that, they are going to do reclamation. So it's not going to affect much need to stay on land. That's what we have done. And in our contract also, the concessionaire has the obligation to prepare the ESIA. And that will be done after we now agree on the layout of the area. It's his obligation to do the ESIA, where some of all these concerns about who are the affected people and how they are going to be, all the risks are to be mitigated will be identified. But one fundamental objective on our side is to go for restoration for all activity, whether it's economic activity or it's even to do with flora and fauna. And the plan is to, maybe where we have a young Gambian operating hospitality business around the beachfront, to see how we can restore that activity if it is affected, rather than do evaluation, compensate, and then acquire. Maybe 10 years down the line, you may not be able to account for how they are faring in terms of their socio-economic well-being. If it is somebody who has this temptation to go into more of social activity, maybe the money will be spent and then they will be in a less than desirable situation before the concession. So, but it depends, these are individual choices, but that's our objective. Where we find somebody doing an activity, we want to restore that activity so that there will be continuous earning. If they decide now to go for compensation and acquisition, well, that will be an individual decision. But our objective is to make sure for sustainability, move people's activity elsewhere where they will continue employment and continue earning.
Yeah, any member? No? Okay. Hello, Honorable. Okay.
The other issue is about the VDC that we talked about. Because looking at Sanyang and some of the particulars or vendors that are involved in, so how do you deal with the people in that area? Because Sanyang, as it is now, even like you have the restaurants there, but above the sea land, like when you move to the beach, you have a lot of people who are officially resident in Sanyang. So how do you deal with them?
Yes, thank you, Honorable, for that important question. As I said earlier, our objective is to restore activity. So where particularly women and fisher folk and less privileged members of society, the vulnerable groups, are involved in activity, our objective is to see how we can restore that activity, number one. Maybe if you have an area where they will still continue in earning, that would be our primary objective. Then number two, because the project is going to be located in Sanyang, all the ancillary benefits in terms of the activity that go to support the business within the whole port ecosystem, they will have that opportunity by natural settlement on the area. So they have a big advantage to benefit from some of these opportunities. But what thing comforts us also is the Sanyang VDC. We have noticed that you have very accomplished Gambians in that VDC. So dealing with them would not be very difficult, because these are people who are already very accomplished Gambians, as I said. They're involved in projects of such nature in many other countries. Some are former ADB staff, some are former ministers. So these are well accomplished Gambians, and they are operators, and they know how to handle such projects. So we believe that we will work very collaboratively with Sanyang. Maybe Matar is the one who directly interacts with the committee, Dr. Sanyang.
What's happening is that the VDC is also taking up for a legal person to be part of the system. So I don't know how you're going to deal with that.
In fact, we met with the VDC and their legal representative in the presence of our minister. And this is where we agreed to fall back and have this kind of engagement with them, where before we go there, we call them and set up an appointment. And the pre-assessment meeting is what we've done. Now we are going to do a pre-entry meeting. But lately, when Mr. Sambu went there, I think they in fact upped their game a little by saying some of these engagements, let's now start to document it. So anytime we want to go there, let's write formally and notify them rather than just the phone call. So, you know, it just goes to show that they are very serious VDC that we're dealing in terms of their exposure and their accomplishments. Because these are people who, like the likes of Dr. Sanyang and former ministers.
And the MP for the area as well.
MP, yes, they are all very accommodating. They know what to expect from this project. And they're very supportive, to be honest. And the meeting we had with them was with their legal counsel also. Yes, maybe Matari, you can just...
Yes, like our meetings with them at the ministry, and also we had a pre-assessment meeting with them, with our consultant at Sanyang at the library, where we went there, we had a very consultative meeting, and they have like laid out some of the things that they think GPA should do prior to continuation of the evaluation. For example, prior notice in the form of writing so that they can have it in their record. Also, MD during his deliberation, he made mention of they have already set up a task force at their end. I think a member of 10 or so, and then the side of GPA and the ministry, two members were incorporated in the project monitoring. So we are doing all these things to make sure that they have all the necessary information at the government level, at our level as GPA, and then we want to have this continued dialogue and engagement with them so that we can have this thing, the transition to be in a very smooth manner, because at the end of the day, the social part of it is very crucial, as rightly mentioned by MD, because you have people having their lives and livelihood along the river, and also those living inland in Sanyang, and there are people who are tied with their heritage in Sanyang and all those things. So we want to work hand in glove with the VDC to put us through in this process, so that we can accomplish everything at once. At the end of the day, it's a national development, and we all know what is up there for us. So we are trying to make sure that we work collectively and achieve the common objective.
Yeah, my question will be centered around the financial model. We need to understand that there are still spending shareholder agreements. So why is this the case? Because I think overall the main reason for I would say getting into this concession with this entity is usually when what it will bring when it comes to cash flow, and later on the dividends that we will yield from, basically. So why are these agreements pending, and would it have been more prudent that these things were formalized and filed, and everything was done and over with before even transiting to the next level? Why are these shareholder agreements still pending?
Thank you, Honorable Jai, for that important question. In fact, as I mentioned earlier in my introduction, we are today organizing a one-day retreat with the steering committee at the level of government, because these are the government stakeholders that participated in the transaction negotiation for this concession agreement, comprising the relevant ministries and the PPP Directorate and Justice and Ministry of Lands and the GPA, GAIPA. There's no explanation for not having submitted the model earlier. What the investor is now suggesting is that because there are a lot of input required in the model, and as I mentioned earlier, they were envisaging also to bring in a new scope, which we have now resolved that it is not in line with our expectation. That's why the model keeps changing. Now, one position we have taken is not to go into effectiveness without the model being approved, because it's a very crucial element, and it will be very risky to go into effectiveness without agreeing on the financial model. Because what the financial model does is it will identify all the investment and all the in terms of the capex and the opex. But then again, it also has the revenue lines, what is expected in terms of revenue. So some of those issues is what we were discussing this early morning, and at some point we had to call them in to come and join us so that we work together. Because the basis of their assumptions, we are in disagreement. And the revenue lines that they were expecting, that they're giving very conservative estimate, we were saying no, the forecast is even higher. So what it has resulted in, the model that was submitted in May, that we based our commercial decision, was having a viability gap of $26 million out of the whole investment of $280 million, in which government is not making any financial contribution. So now, when they were using the management accounts or the 2023 draft audited financial statements, they saw that some of the revenue lines have dropped as opposed to what was envisaged in the management account. So that warranted them to realize that the viability gap has now dropped even further to 126 million. So that's what we are discussing with them now. See how to go back on the basis of the assumption. Try to contain some of the OPEX. Try to review the revenue drivers upwards from what of the low scenario, and then see how that would translate in the viability gap that was already agreed earlier. And at the end of the day, if the viability gap comes to the position that we agreed in the concession agreement, the risk is on them as an investor, because government is not taking any investment risk. So if they accept that they can go into the project with a $26 million viability gap, our responsibility is to make sure that we monitor implementation according to the schedules that they have submitted. In Banjul, what is going to happen is we are foregoing the dividends on our side just to show that we are not out for the quick financial gains, but we want the infrastructure delivered that will improve efficiency and reduce the cost of doing business in Banjul. If you see a lot of cargo get diverted to neighboring countries, it's because of some inefficiencies in the port, and basically to do with the infrastructure, which is below capacity. But the advantages is you will forego dividends in Banjul, but globally, if we submit a financial model, you will realize that even in Sanyang, during the first 15 years, because of the magnitude of the debt that the investor is going to take to build a new infrastructure, up to about $218 million, they start to get dividend after the 15 to 17. But closer to the end of the concession period, you'll see a huge cash flow with less investment from the side of government, and then you get delivered and improved infrastructure. Overall, these are the quick gains that government is looking at to see how, with an improved infrastructure, the cost of doing business in Gambia would reduce, and then that would translate to aggregate benefits for the economy. So that's the consideration we give in this financial model, but it's yet to be concluded. And as I said, we are on a retreat to have discussions with the investor. But one condition that remains unchanged is that we will not go into effectiveness without concluding on the financial model. It will be too risky to do that.
Yeah, MD, you want to follow up? Yeah, thank you.
Chair mentioned the idea of maybe having repetitive addendums later on, based on maybe some, how would I put it, some forecasting that might be a bit, might catch you off guard, basically. So when it comes to this prudence, how do you see this project going forward? Right, when it comes to some of these projections that we're doing, and then having to come back on the drawing board to revisit certain areas. I know that you are very optimistic about the future, but how do you see this concession moving forward, especially when it comes to the financial modeling and some of these arguments?
Well, like you rightly said, the financial modeling, because the investor bears all the financing risk, it's up to them now to make a strong business case to make sure that they realize the return on their investment. For us, the risk of non-performance is there. So that's why in the concession agreement, we have managed to agree on them raising certain bonds for non-performance for all of these stages. For Banjul, for Sanyang pre-construction, for Sanyang construction.
That goes to GPA?
Yes, the bond. They are raised in the name of GPA for non-performance. And we believe that once the right investment is done and the business is turned around, government is looking at the cost of doing business in Banjul being lowered. Because right now with the congestion, we are not handling volume of cargo at our optimum because of the inefficiency. So if there's efficiency gain, even these revenue drivers, we expect them to grow, and there will be even more dividend to share. And if the Sanyang activity goes well, because in forecasting, they just take the conservative estimate, but we expect that because transport infrastructure naturally is an enabler, it induces growth. It's like building a road in the middle of a village. You increase people's access to market, so the production capacity is already induced. That's what we believe that in transport. If the right infrastructure is there, those volumes that get diverted to Dakar, that have Banjul cargo already, will start coming back. And then we can also attract cargo that is going for transit to third countries. So that's the expectation. But those are not factored in the model anyway. But those are the expectations that we hope that can make the business to be more viable in future. But as a government, we want to address some major constraints we have in Banjul. And that is the lack of financial resources to invest in the capacity improvement that will turn around the business. Competing with regional ports with the infrastructure in Banjul is not sustainable. For example, dredging in Banjul alone will cost the authority every year more than 2 million euros to maintain the depth. And this is recurring. If you have a facility in Sanyang, you already have 12 meters, so it increases the size of the ships that can call. And because those ships are bigger, the unit rate in terms of freight will be lower. So these are the aggregate benefits we are looking for. We are not looking for quick financial gains, we know. But that's why the investment has this viability gap on the side of the investor. But they are prepared to take the risk. And what is also expected is they're going to go into the inland port in Kawur and in Basse, and also go into property development. These are other avenues for revenue generation that will make the venture maybe even more profitable in the end for them. But as far as modeling is concerned, they can only use the baseline figures and do their projections. And this is why it is resulting to $26 million in.
Yeah, I just have a last question.
Gap.
Yeah, like regionally, how do you see, like, when it comes to the trade routes, for example? I know you're optimistic when it comes to, let's say, some of the businesses that we are losing to Senegal with the directed back here. Because they also won't be sitting down, they'll be doing certain things at their end. We've seen like areas like Funjun and some other things. They're also having projective projects, maybe not of this nature, but they're also working at their own level to make sure that they capture the business around those ends. So at our own level here, how do you see this project in relation to them? And what are we doing at our own level?
In fact, what we can deduce from our own market intelligence is that the main motivation for the investor is to capture the business that goes to third countries. 10% of only the cargo that goes to Mali is already being competed for by ports in the sub-region. You have Abidjan, there's Lomé, there's Tema, and now Dakar and Banjul, they want to come into this fray. It's a very competitive business, but our competitive advantage lies in our proximity to those markets. And in terms of distance, we're shorter when it comes to the immediate neighbor. And in terms of the macroeconomic, systems that are very much encouraging business, they're more positive in Gambia than in the Western Coast, because there are a lot of administrative formalities involved in goods processing. Here, there's streamlined administration. The distances are closer, and the workforce are much younger and more easily trainable. So those are some of the advantages. The Turkish were even surprised to come and find staff working in the port with IT systems that control the whole delivery process. So those are some of the things that we believe that we can be able to survive the competition. And basically, the river would be our game changer in this whole arrangement. If the inland ports in Basse and Kawur develop, trucks coming from the southwest regions in Mali up to Banjul to pick wares, they will not have to travel that distance. They will just stop in Basse, pick up cargo, and return. Because from Basse to those areas is about 380 kilometers. And if they have to come all the way to Banjul, it's about 680. But the neighboring port is 1,200 already. So from Banjul to those places, we are already shorter by half. Much more if we go inland. It will reduce the distance that they have to go. So those are the things that we believe can attract business and make Banjul Port and Gambia to remain viable and survive the competition.
Okay, MD, thank you very much. For me, when you keep saying the financial risk is on the side of the investor, one thing I know, investors, they don't lose money, just like the banks. So probably they know something that we don't know. We thought they are going to lose, but in fact they are not going to lose. You keep saying this, and I don't know why do you believe that all this financing risk is on, maybe on the face of it, that's what you see, me and you will see on the face of it, but beyond that, they may know something that we don't know. Number one. Number two, I don't know why also the environmental and the social impact assessment is relegated to the investor. Why are we not involved in that? I think our side should also be involved in social and environmental impact assessment, so that what is going to be generated from this process is something, even though I know when they bring it, we are going to evaluate it, probably even the National Environment, but it is important that you have a representative in this social and environmental impact assessment. That's number two. Number three, reclamation. We thought about is now more on the sea. So what I want us to be very careful is let's have planning in the driver's seat as far as this port expansion project is concerned. We may have a sufficient area on the sea, but for it to be sustainable in several years to come, let's reclaim all the necessary lands for now. It's going to be easier, and with also regards to cost, it's going to be cheaper now that you want to wait until Sanyang becomes an area where everybody want to go and build their expensive structures and want to start reclaiming those areas. So let's not relax on that process. Let's make sure we reclaim the total number of hectares we need. We're going to think ahead, please. So let's do that, so that it's not going to be costly for government in the future. Then my last intervention, number 4. We are only talking about port expansion around Sanyang, but for me, I'm now looking it further. The road network to Sanyang. Because you cannot just develop that kind of facility in Sanyang. The road that leads to Sanyang right now is too narrow. So it might still inconvenience the investment. How are we trying to put that into perspective? To expand road from Brikama to Sanyang, or from any other transit, that's going to connect businesses to Sanyang very easily. Not the present road we have. That's too narrow. So I don't know whether you are varying your mind to that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. On the financing risk, what we mean is the investor is the one bearing that risk, because government is not bring any financial contribution in the whole venture. We only do contribution in kind in Sanyang, and that is the land that we are going to seed in the project. And it is not going to be land that will be carried in the name of the investor. It remains government's property. So that's what we always mean by the financing risk, because we are not taking making any contribution. So the investor bears all the financing. He brings all the money to do the investment.
Okay.
Then on the side of the ASIA, it's the obligation of the investor, because he is the one who has the detailed engineering, design, and all the preparatory studies. So it's they take ownership of the infrastructure.
So the investor do that exclusive by himself? You have engineers there. They can be part of this process.
No, what we do is we have to approve it, the ASIA. And part of the approval, like you rightly said, goes through our national laws in terms of the NEA. In addition, we have recruited the services of an independent engineer called Royal Haskoning of the Netherlands. I think they're by far the industry leaders when it comes to marine infrastructure. So those are consultants that are working on the side of GPA and government. We hire them separately. So for every step of technical study or reports that is generated by the investor, it is scrutinized by this consultant acting on our behalf, and then advise us. And in our engagement, there's a reporting requirement for observations, comment, feedback, until because we have to approve whatever they're going to do. So our fallback is we have an independent engineer, which is a whole firm that will do all the technical evaluation for us on what this consultant is going to submit. So they will involve in the SIA as well. On the side of reclamation, yes, I think the ministry is handling that. That's why lawyer always teases me that whenever they say MBA is on the radio, it causes sleeplessness in the village designer, because the statement we issue is that from the port perimeter up to the highway is earmarked by government for future development, because we don't want to be caught up, like you mentioned rightly, in Banjul, where for future development you are already in an area that is already encumbered. The compensation and acquisition will be more difficult, both in terms of people settling there and the cost it will generate. But this is the lot. That's why we are concentrating the land acquisition in 2 lots. Lot 1 is for the immediate port. Then lot 2 we defer, and it will take time. Let the Sanyang community not be worried, because we know how the process goes. You cannot do it in 1 or 2 years. It has to take some time. But generally, government will handle the process by earmarking the area that is required, and then maybe come up with the gazette and issue the notice to freeze any development, so that at least the value of the properties that are on them would not start increasing. Because people also would speculate on that. If they understand that a project is coming somewhere, before a notice is issued to freeze development, they will already have their development permits and start putting up skyscrapers that will always increase the value of the compensation to be attractive. On the road network, I can authoritatively quote our line Ministry of Transport that what they have in this plan is to do a dual carriageway from the grocery turntable to and beyond the Sanyang. That one I can quote authoritatively. But apart from that, I was privy to certain discussion where government is now looking at the whole connectivity around the Sanyang. I am not very familiar with the topography, what was being mentioned, but the areas that have been mentioned were to link, I think, Sanyang, there's a cornice going through to Sifo and
Brikama.
Brikama. I'm not too familiar with
Sifo, that's limited kind of
yes.
diversion.
But there's a network that is currently being discussed at the level of the ministry. But I'm sure maybe with your permission, we'll get more details about this from the ministry to report correctly to the committee.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. MD, when it comes to the contribution of government and about the project in Sanyang, when mentioned about the land that is under government, that is government that will be the responsibility of government to contribute towards the project.
Yeah.
My question is when it comes to the land issue, we know in the Gambia here, there have been some projects that are ongoing now. Our only problem is when it comes to compensation. Who will be taking care of that compensation?
This is government.
Fine. And then how far have you gone on to that? Because like, I know you are engaging the VDC, and then did you quantify the money that is going to be involved in this? Because it's very key. Because the land that you're claiming to be yours, people must claim ownership. And if they claim ownership also, if that money needs to be quantified to know this is the amount that we need to pay, we need to know. Because at the end of the day, if the money project starts, we negotiate, it will start. The moment it starts, then we start having problems. Because people start coming back onto you to say, we are not compensated, we are still not paid, we are still not receiving our money. The timeline for that compensation should be very clear. Is it before the project starts, or when the project starts, and how will you be able to get those funds to compensate those people? The other thing also when it comes to the percentage-wise, I've seen 90-70, 90 from the investor when you first started. That's what is still holding your government is about 70%. And it comes to meeting those targets. They have 90-70. Why is government still lacking on this behind with 90-70 and the investment is going in the Gambia? And these they are not giving in cash. They are only giving in kind or based on what they have. Why are they still lacking behind?
Thank you, Honorable Sir, for those pertinent questions. In terms of the valuation, our consultant, that's the next exercise. They have now identified all the property, but they now need to move on site and do the valuation. But this is where we also had some issues, because the community in Sanyang raised some concerns about the way the mapping exercise was being done. So that's why we asked them to withdraw. But they have already mapped the area. So now it's just to do the valuation, which is basically not a field work, but a desk work. We will come to that, and once the values are established, then there's a whole process of the compensation, which would involve the owners themselves, participating in the negotiation. And it's not going to be a forceful acquisition. But as a port, we have had the experience dealing with the community in Banjul, and I think it's even more stringent, because here people own land in perpetuity, as opposed to anywhere within Congo's where it's lease that is belonging to government. But not the same. There's a land acquisition and compensation that which will be followed in terms of the due process. But it also links to your next question, why we are 70% achievement. It's because of these issues. If you have a CP tracker that says by December you should make the land available in Sanyang, by December you've only done mapping exercise, so you score 25 out of 100. So in aggregate terms, that's why we reach 70%. But substantially, they are not affecting implementation in terms of effectiveness, because it will not delay the work in Banjul, or it will not affect the work in Banjul that is envisaged to be done. So what we are going to do is to request for a waiver of right from the concession, because it's two parties. If you are not fulfilling your part, you can apply for the other part to waive that right for you. So that waiver is what will allow us another maybe 6 months to go through this exercise so that they can start.
Well, you also affect the work in Sanyang because it's still pending. And you need to negotiate with the community. You need to negotiate with the VDC. If Banjul kickstarts within that period of time and Sanyang is still pending, hope there will not be a problem.
Yes, for Sanyang in the agreement, we have a 12-month pre-construction CP, which overlaps into that, and with the possibility for further 6 months extension. Because we know what to expect, that within 18 months it should be reasonable to get all these land issues wrapped up. And even what is interesting in our engagement with the VDC, they've been throwing around this question, which our legal affairs manager has even engaged government to inquire what forms part of the TDA land. Because one of their questions was, before you start asking Sanyang people to contribute, you as government, you claim to own the TDA. Before you ask somebody to contribute, take your own and do it as a project. So our legal affairs manager has written to government to seek that clarification, so we understand TDA. Yes, where the 800 meter or...
I think it's 500 from the watermark of lands, onshore. That is what government reserved for tourism development purposes. So instead of looking at what our engineering design is going to look like, and then the reclamation that is going to be done, inside the sea. So it would, should government want to take land, of the community, it may be minimal. It may be minimal, and the legal frameworks are all there. You have the constitutional right to protection against deprivation of property, and then you have the Land Acquisition and Compensation Act. We will ensure, government will ensure that the right procedure is followed, and that no one will be disadvantaged, because property is very personal. It's a very sensitive issue. So going into it, you have to put in all the right frameworks and make sure that people whose properties are taken are adequately compensated.
Before the project or after the project? Is it compensation, acquisition, or compensation?
You compensate and acquire.
Before the project.
And also depends on what methodology.
But that's what they keep saying. But if you look at the OIC project, this was the slogan. Yeah. But the properties were eventually acquired. Compensation still, some are struggling for their compensation. And what is so disturbing, some will come to our office and tell us 15 years ago, it Costa Road project, they don't still have their compensation. And those are bad lessons that we now...
No, but our experience in Banjul, we compensate and acquire.
So, MD, let's be very careful of that, please, so that we don't have the experience. Some of them, they even died. Their children came at that legal struggle of getting this, so A, B, and C. They don't. So, at the end of the day, they may even lose those properties. So, let's make sure we have those... The in-house counsel should make sure that he put his house in order. So that at the end of the day, because they may go to the drag you to court and you pay them a lot of money. So the in-house counsel should make sure that those things, yeah.
And even his target currently, as he already mentioned, the 500 meters. I think I have to look at this properly. Because we all know the issue in Sanyang. The MP is here.
We are not very sure. The figures may
even the figures.
Either 500.
Yeah, let's just maintain 500 for the meantime. When you go, you verify. But we know the issue of Sanyang. Sanyang, currently, there are a lot of structures in Sanyang. And then before this, number of meters we are identified, if you look at the level of sea level, and then by that time between the river and then the land, there was a big gap. Because of this sand mining, it is coming up. So where are you going to start your 500? That's very important here. Why are you going to start your 800? Because if at all I was there for 20 years, I did my structures, and now you came to claim that those structures are within the TDA area, it might be a problem. So I think you need to look at this thing properly and know where to start and how to start with it, and then go ahead with those people who will be affected. Because at the end of the day, they will say, yes, you are part of the TDA. So that's why I say you look at it properly, and then at the end of the day, those people also will not be there to end up being losers.
Okay, then.
Point one note.
Yes, you have.
Okay. No, we come with this. Okay. So you say you can say something about it.
Yeah. Yes, you go ahead. Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you very much, MD. Banjul Ferry Service is on the GPA. Is it part of this concession agreement? That's my first question. Two, the dry dock. The dry dock also, is it part of this concession? That's my question.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Chair, for those pertinent questions. For Banjul or Gambia Ferry Service Company Limited, it's not part of the concession scope. However, Banjul Shipyard is part of it. Banjul Shipyard is part of it. So part of the staff that are going to be transferred under the new company includes Banjul Shipyard. Yes. But ferries is separate, and for the shipyard, it was a deliberate decision from the government because of the investment that is required to upgrade and revitalize the shipyard. And we believe that the concession partner it will make a viable business case. And these are some of the items that can also make the business model even more viable, although it is conservative for now. But shipyard, we know the potential to generate revenue is huge because there's no functioning shipyard around this area. And as the company, it will be in their informed interest to have the shipyard functional because they will be operating marine craft. And then ferries will also have the opportunity to be dried up as and when required. But ferries is not part of it. But we have a separate decision that we are encouraging government to take about ferries because with this concession, some of the financial resources that were available to GPA to provide support to ferries may not be there. So, but there's a plan that we have encouraged government to consider to implement that will make the ferries to be self-sustaining with the new acquisition in the craft and right-sizing and optimizing the staffing levels. Ferries should be able to break even and sustain itself without having to rely on GPA support, which may not be forthcoming. On the side of the, sorry?
I think it's okay.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
On the same ferry issue, my question is with regards to the agreement. You know, there is currently a company that is already in when it comes to ferry issue. Is it part of the Al-Barak team or there is a different team?
Well, it's a different operation. But in the beginning, when we were doing the tender for the Port of Banjul, Al-Barak and Negma is the name of this company. They submitted a joint bid as a consortium.
Exactly.
But that's for the Port of Banjul concession. And when the evaluation was done and the shortlisting was done and Al-Barak was part of the responsive bidder, for them, they invoked another criteria in our bidding document. That was for the commercial strategic fit to suggest this Sanyang Deep Sea Port. That's how government invited them into the negotiation. When we reached that stage, the company wrote to say that they are taking this project on their own, not on a consortium. So that's how Al-Barak continued with this project alone without Negma being part of the consortium. They were a consortium only for Banjul. But when the Sanyang project came into the equation, yes, they went alone without Negma. Negma have been given a license to operate a private ferry, and that is different from the port concession altogether.
That's this one there on the road.
Yes, that's the company that is building up doing some construction work around the former radio seal.
Private ferries. How?
But in Banjul, the connection is Negma and Al-Barak.
Al-Barak and Negma, that was the consortium.
That's what before.
That bid for the Banjul project.
And then it is given to them.
No. No,
yeah.
The project scope change, you know.
So that's where I'm coming to.
Al-Barak proceedings.
You know, we have passed this procurement stage, MD.
Let me just because I mean, the reason why I'm asking, it was done when it comes to procurement. It was evaluated based on these two companies. That's why they were qualified to be given the contract. Right or wrong?
Not really honorable, because the scope changed.
How many were competing?
10 bid for the EOI. 8 were shortlisted and went to the next stage, which is the full technical and financial submission. After that, 3 were retained as the most responsive. That is Yield Port of Turkey, Al Bayrak and Negma Consortium, and Red Sea Gateway of Saudi Arabia. But in the evaluation criteria, you know, there was 3 criteria: technical, financial, strategic, commercial fit. So they passed on the technical, commercial together. But on the strategic, commercial fit, that's where Al Bayrak invoked as a company alone and proposed to government that, look, it's good to invest 130 million in Banjul. For the next 10, 20 years, we'll come back to the same problem: dredging, lack of capacity to expand seawater, climate risk, sea level rise. We want to build a new deep sea port in Sanyang at our own risk. So that's how the transaction scope changed, because that was already envisaged. So they went on it alone. The reasons why they decided to go alone without the consortium is best known to them.
Yeah, my reason of asking this question, MD, is those that were solicited, if they were also given the opportunity.
No, they were.
No, I'm coming up. If they were also given the opportunity, when it changed to say NEGMA out, because NEGMA also came with their qualification, they came with their technical expertise to join with Al Bayrak to qualify them to be first choice. So after Al Bayrak saying no to NEGMA, there is a gap.
Okay, I understand your concerns, Honorable, but what I also want to point out is that in the procurement process, one of the investors, after being notified that you are amongst the 3 responsive bidders, decided to invoke another criteria in the bidding document that, look, we want to invoke this commercial fit and propose an alternative for you. So in that, as a procuring authority, we offered the same opportunity to these other 2 bidders. Red Sea responded, but with some reservations that it has to be market triggered. Yield Port declined. Al Bayrak accepted to take the risk. So that does not include NEGMA, because NEGMA participated with Al Bayrak as a consultant, only for the Banjul. So that's the difference.
Okay, MD, thank you very much. You know, that's why if you want to go to this procurement process, we've passed the stage, but I have a lot of questions for you. But at the end of the day, it's not going to help us because we've passed the procurement stage now. We are going to...
We at least said light on it because it's very important. Because it's about procurement. You qualify SAR and Sanyang because they are qualified to do it. I don't know if Sanyang say no, this is what I want to do. It was not part of the first agreement. Because when we are submitting, Sanyang was not there. Along the line, Sanyang came up. And now, when Sanyang came up, SAR is now at Sanyang who is taking care of everything. But Sanyang and SAR qualified because they meet the requirement that was part of the specifications. That give them the right to be awarded.
But you are right, Honorable Sir. But you know the thing is, we cannot second guess Al Bayrak why they decided to part company with NEGMA as a consortium when the scope changed.
That's what
but what we know is, if the scope changed, you offer the same opportunity to the other 2 shortlisted bidders to be in line with the procurement. That you have to do fair competition. This guy says he's offering not only Banjul, but he will do Sanyang. You offer the same thing to the other 2. One of them said, okay, I can only do, but with this condition. The other said, no, I'm not interested.
So NEGMA wrote to you to say...
No, NEGMA did not. It's Al Bayrak who wrote.
To say NEGMA is no more in part of it.
Yes.
No, in fact, one thing, contract arrangement, most cases, joint venture. We don't scrutinize, go into that.
There was a lead partner.
Personal,
yes, it's a lead partner and a...
You know, if we the contracting agents want to go into their joint venture, it's like...
No, in joint venture, it's very clear in contracts. Whether they are joint ventures, it's very, very clear that, yes, I'm doing joint venture. When it comes to evaluation, they evaluate based on the joint venture. That's qualified. When I was doing the job, I didn't have the capacity.
I understand.
That's why I came into joint venture with him.
That's right.
That's qualified me to be given the contract. So if I thought I was qualified because I came into joint venture with only the guy together, we are still qualified. But if I'm putting out on the guy, my qualification goes down.
But
evaluation criteria we deal with that.
Also,
I think you said that.
You know, there's a lead partner in this joint venture and an affiliate. And the lead partner normally in their arrangement takes all the responsibility and the obligations.
Project. Lot 2, this one. So MD, now we want to wrap up now. The documents, we want them on before Friday.
Hard or soft copy?
Both if possible.
Both if possible. Yeah.
Which email?
Committees at assembly.gm.
Sorry? Committees at assembly.gm. Small case.
Let me write it for you.
Okay.
Yeah, and also to wrap up in few sentences, and I also want you to respond in few sentences to some of this entire agreement. It's like government have a risk, the risk that we cannot manage. And we invite somebody to come and manage this risk for us, but with certain investments. Now, speak in few sentences. How are you ready to monitor this investment requirement of the concessionaire?
First and foremost, we have committed the investor to carry out bonds, performance bonds, for each stage of the project, that to ensure that they implement what they have committed to do. Number 2, we have set up monitoring and evaluation system that is in 3 layers. First is the GPA as the contracting authority that deals with them on a day-to-day basis. Second is the technical committee level that is chaired by the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Transport, and it involves all the key relevant government stakeholders. And then the 3rd layer is the cabinet subcommittee. So these are all the monitoring mechanisms that we have in place to ensure that the contractor fulfills its
Cabinet don't have the
obligations.
capacity. We rely on you people to cabinet. You don't rely on cabinet for this kind of investment.
Well, yeah, that's why I put it into 3 layers. We dealing with them on a daily basis. The steering committee at the level of the
you just report to
and then cabinet, yes, for
yeah,
report.
Just a briefing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
The performance bond is from where?
Not the investor. They carry out the bond. Like for budget, there's pre-effectiveness bond.
Yeah, the performance bond is from a people bank or what?
Bank acceptable to the contracting authority.
It's in the country or outside the country?
Well, it depends on what they make, but it has to be acceptable to us. We have to accept that, yes. But normally, if we have banks in the country, depending on the amount and the gearing of the bank, our transaction advisor is there, and our people are also, a lot of them are finance background. They have to look at the adequacy of the bond and the reputation of the bank that is being carried.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the issue of the ferries also, I mean, MD, I know you are the head of the ferries. Is a concern, Mr. Cha.
Yes, sir.
You raised it. You raised this last time.
Right.
About the ferries. The MD is here.
Yeah.
And it was the concern that you raised.
Yeah.
So, MD, I know the ferries contract, according to you, I have little know about it. Can you help us with the ferry contract, if possible? Because there is an issue that you raised last time. It is very key when it comes to Barra. People are complaining. I think you can explain yourself.
Yeah, as he rightly said, the people of Barra have started complaining that this project is affecting some of the sites, that is the areas of the seaside of Barra. One second. It has affected some compounds in Barra, plus the fault line. So there are a lot of complaints. So I don't know whether you heard about it.
Well, yes, we have been officially engaged by the National Environment Agency. I think following some concerns that were raised, and the concerns were in the public space. Maybe that may have prompted NEA to call up a stakeholder meeting, and I think it has to be done on site to ensure that the necessary screening, the necessary environmental studies are done to allow the project to proceed. But as an authority, we are not involved in this agreement or the construction at all. If anything, they have been given license by government to operate a private ferry service. But what we know has happened lately is that the NEA has engaged us to be part of a task force. I think it's a multi-sectoral task force to go and assess whether the construction right now going in Barra has any environmental impact. We can only gauge from our involvement with them that maybe there's a rethink on the whole concern that any structure around Barra would have on the settlement whether it will be threatened to be submerged because of any construction there. It is apparent it will affect the wave patterns, and it has implications that need to be analyzed.
Okay.
Yeah, with this problem issue, do you contact UNESCO about it, in the sense that most of them are complaining that from that fault website, it should be 100 meters before anything is built or developed?
At this stage, Honorable, what I may do will be prudent is just take note of the concerns. Right. Since there's a committee that is already established at the level of NEA, we will make sure that the right expertise is put into addressing some of this impact and come up with something that is sustainable. Because the project has to also have a positive impact on both marine flora and fauna and for economic livelihood of citizens.
Thank you very much, MD. Thank you, honorable members. This brings us to the end of this special conversation. We requested for the comments. If you submit them before Friday, the committee will review and invite you for the final session, okay? We thank you very much with your lead counsel and your economists. Thank you very much. Thank you. Sure. Honorable members.
Yeah.